So moving on from the automotive stuff, I'm doing something a little bit different. This is a piece of black walnut. My brother has a sawmill and he cuts slabs of wood. He's dried this and it's ready to be worked with for whatever you want to do. So I'm going to make a bit of a serving board. This slab I think is too big. He's already cut it down for me. It was pretty long, so he's cut it in. This is the bigger half of it, but he cut it in half. And then I think I'm going to follow this curve and kind of go and cut around there over to this curve. I'll cut that crack out. And then I'm going to kind of follow this curve here around again and something like that. So make it a bit smaller and then I'll sand it down. I got some mineral oil coming so we can wash it down with that. So I'm going to get started marking where I'm going to cut it. I'm going to use the jigsaw to cut her down. I got to pop all the bark off the edge and I'll kind of show you every step of the way. So I've got this side marked with pencil where I'm going to cut it, that heavy dark line there. I haven't marked this side yet because I really want to keep kind of this whole centerpiece of the wood in, but I don't want the serving board to be too big. So I'm kind of going to see how it looks once I got that cut off. And then we'll go from there because I think that would be really nice to keep in. So I don't want to have to cut that out. So I'm hoping I got a light line here that just kind of catches the edge of that. I'm hoping I can keep that kind of center of the wood in without having the board being too big. So I should have known this, but this is really hard wood. So our little jigsaw there was struggling to cut through there. So what I'm going to do is take it to the table saw and do a few cuts, and hopefully I'll be able to get kind of the curve, maybe not quite perfect. I can hopefully sand it down afterwards or just kind of trim a couple corners off with the jigsaw after to get kind of that finished curve that I want. So there's kind of my first cut there. I'm about an inch away from that line still. So I'm going to cut one on an angle, kind of where my jigsaw went in there, following that line up, and then I'll do another one kind of over here, cut that kind of curve into it, and then I'll probably come do one more final one right across the top. So after a series of cuts, I kind of got the general shape I wanted, not quite exactly, but I can sand it down now, or hopefully use the jigsaw to make a few small cuts to kind of get back to that more rounded shape I want. Call me crazy, but I might even try the grinder with that flap wheel on it. And so once I get that curve out, I've got to decide how big I want to make it. I think it wouldn't be crazy if I kept that, it wouldn't be crazy big if I kept this whole circle in there, so I think I'm going to go for that. I got all the bark off of it, and we can start sanding it. So that grinder actually worked awesome. I was able to get all the flat edges out and then kind of make it just kind of wonky, just kind of natural looking. I curved the tip there a little bit so that it doesn't have kind of a sharp cutoff right at the top of what will be the serving base of it. I got a little bit ahead of myself, kind of almost started to want to finish it with the grinder, but I'm going to kind of do all the finishing at once. So I think with that, I will be able to go out to keep in most of this dark spot here. I'm going to cut off the very tail end where it kind of starts to get more of a sharp point, but all that gradual curve I'm going to be able to keep in. So I think this is going to turn out really awesome when it's done. So now I'm going to do 3 straight cuts on this edge, one straight across, one kind of there, and then one over here. I'll see how it looks. I may do a few more. I may just finish that off with the grinder to give it kind of that final curve that I want. So that's kind of where I'm at before I start sanding this edge down. So this is how it's looking after my straight cuts. So I'm going to take the grinder to it. I got to take quite a bit off this side, a lot more than I did off this side. So I'm going to see how the grinder works. If it's taking too long or not working out well, then I'll just take it back to the table saw, do a few more straight cuts, and then add my curves in with the grinder afterwards. Also got looking, and once I strip the bark off, we're going to have a nice curve kind of there. So I think I'll take the grinder and kind of taper that curve off into a straight edge. But we'll see, kind of wait until we get the bark off and kind of go step by step. So I took it back to the table saw and I kind of screwed up here. I did a few part cuts and it started off like that. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the grinder here and smoothing it all out. That one I just kind of started at, and just going to kind of make it look like a bit of a gash in the wood, sort of. So hopefully it doesn't look too bad, but we'll see. But on the flip side, you can't hardly tell, so I'm not too worried about it. So with the grinder there, I kind of got my edges all curved how I want them. So that's kind of the end shape we got. My two notches there that I screwed up on, but like I said, when that's sanded out, it won't be bad. So I'm liking it. There's hardly any straight edges, which is what I kind of wanted. You want it looking sort of natural. So I gotta clean this bark off and then we'll start sanding. So there's one side debarked. To do that, I just kind of got the hammer and a flathead screwdriver and chiseled the big stuff off, and then went over it quick with the grinder again to clean off all remaining. So I'm going to go ahead, do it on this side, then we'll start sanding it. That's kind of the edge before you take the grinder to it. I've got most of the big bark chiseled off. Now it's just kind of that fine stuff real stuck to the edge of the wood. So I'll take the grinder to that, clean it up. After I got all the bark off with the grinder, I just kind of rolled over the edges, kind of give them a natural curve to smoothly flow into all my cut edges. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm going for, is just kind of a natural look. You don't want anything to be square, or like you want it to look like it was just cut down and not cut square by anyone, just straight off the tree. So now I've just got the orbital sander here, and I've got 4 different grits of sandpaper. We're going to start with 60, go down to 80, 120, and then go to 220 to finish it. So I'm not sure how long this is going to take, but I'll get started sanding and kind of show you each different grit and how the finish looks. So that was maybe 5 minutes with the 60 grit, and that's one side. It started something like, it was a lot darker than that. That's actually kind of a nice color. Started kind of a dark stained color, and now it's a lot more white in it. So I'll do the other side quick, and then we'll drop her down to the 80 grit. So one thing I should point out is normally when doing this, you would run your plank through a planer to kind of get any warpage out of it, because you can see there's a bit of a gap on that bottom side. So when I flip it over, it's really wobbly back and forth. It's bowed kind of in the center, but I don't have a planer. So I'm just going to do a lot of sanding and hope I kind of am able to sand that out. So now both sides of the board have been sanded down with 60 grit sandpaper. So I'm going to move on to 80 grit. I really worked it for a while trying to get that warp out of there, but I don't think it's going to come without many hours of sanding. And as I'm giving this away for free, I'm not going to spend too much crazy time on it. I mean, I want it to be good, but I'm not going to waste hours trying to get that hop out of it for a serving board. So that's the finish with 80 grit, both sides. It's starting to come out really nice. We're going to move now to 120 grit. And with every pass, well, I knew this would happen, but I didn't think it would happen this much. With every pass of the sander, that hop's coming out quite a bit. That's still a lot. A joiner, you'd have nothing, but it's getting a lot better. So I think if you use this kind of as a serving top, there's not much bounce in there, and then the other side would just be your base. So yeah, we'll go 120, and then I think I've got 220 after that, and that'll be our final sanding. Then we'll have to coat it with our oil, whatever that's called, mineral oil, and it'll be all ready to go. So this is one side all done. This was the other side that I had sanded to 120, I believe. and this is at 220, so you can totally see the difference there. As far as the warp goes, it's still in there for sure, you can definitely tell. But what do? I'm not spending any more time trying to sand that down because I've just spent way too long with that final 220. So sand this down in 220 and I'll show you the finished results. So unfortunately I wasn't able to finish this side to how I wanted. When I was switching sanding discs, the whole little piece that holds the disc on pulled right off. So I didn't quite get this one down to where I wanted it, but I'm going to call her okay because this side's looks awesome. And I think this will be the top side anyways. It's got a lot less of a wobble in it than if you have this side down. So I'm going to call her good. Yeah, so now it just needs some mineral oil put on her and it'll be ready to be used in the kitchen. So this is kind of the final product before the mineral oil, all sanded down and ready to go. This was actually cut from the same slab, like it would have been right on the edge here where we rounded it. So that's a big difference. This piece too, I think I am going to make into a board, and that little edge piece there, they'll all be getting sanded down in nice boards like this. These ones I'm going to keep square because it just goes better with the flow. That one I like how I rounded it. I think it kind of gives the illusion that it's more of a stump piece, whereas this was, you can totally tell it was the long end of the trunk going up. I mentioned that you probably won't see much of the 84 for a while on this channel because I've got a few other little things on the go. So one is I bought another truck, an 05 that I'm going to be daily driving, so it needs a bit of work. You'll see that for a little bit. The other thing is my brother turned his Gator into a submarine, so that engine's got to be rebuilt. So that'll be, I don't know whether I'll film any of that or not. Likely will, because it's kind of a cool project too. So you'll see that. So thanks for watching. I'd love to hear in the comments if any of you have an idea for what I could do to plane this without a planer. These pieces, they're not going to be as bad. They're not nearly as warped. But for the next one, if I do, if it is warped, that sanding was taking forever. It didn't really work to plane it. So if anyone has an idea, I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching. So this is the final product of the cutting board or serving board once it's been oiled. So we did 2 coats of oil. One was a very thick one, let it soak in overnight, and then the second one was just a light kind of skim over it with oil again. So that's one side. That's the other side. It's a fair bit darker in person, not crazy darker, but yeah. The oil was just mineral oil bought off Amazon. I think it was $16 for a bottle. We used about half of it, but this cutting board or serving board, it's big. You can't really tell in the picture, but you could probably do about 4 regular sized cutting boards with one bottle. So again, thanks for watching, and be sure to keep watching for more content.